Welcome back. It's time for business, and I'm joined again by Matthew. Hello again, Matthew. Now, the annual meetings of two of the world's most important financial bodies are starting today, but one country is snubbing them.
That's right. So it's the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. They're holding their meetings, their annual meetings in Tokyo this time. Usually it's in Washington. About 20,000 of the great and the good from the financial world should be attending, but one who won't be is the governor of China's central bank. Now, apparently, it's because there's a scheduling problem, but really what most people think is that it's over this dispute between China and Japan over islands in the East China Sea. That's having a huge political impact and economic impact as well. We just heard yesterday Toyota and Honda, their sales were down 50% thereabouts in September in China, and other manufacturers like South Korea's Hyundai is managing to make gains. They're up about 15% in the same period.
And we're going to stay with Asia, looking at the markets.
Yes, we will. We'll take a look at Japan, actually, because the Japanese market, the Nikkei, is off quite a lot this Wednesday, off down by 1.8%, as you can see there. Problems that we've just talked about, but also these new forecasts on world economic growth from the IMF damaging sentiment. And on Wall Street, it was a similar story at the end of the trading session there on Tuesday. Markets also down. The Nasdaq off by 1.5% there.
Now, back here in Europe, a last-minute deal has been reached on taxing financial transactions.
Yes, this financial transactions tax, or sometimes it's called the Tobin tax, named after the economist who came up with the idea in the 1970s. Now, 9 European countries were needed to get this tax going. In fact, 11 have signed up. Ultimately, that means a group of countries will be going ahead with this tax while others remain opposed, including the UK and Sweden.
This could be the beginning of a regulation on a financial transaction tax in Europe. 11 countries, including France, Germany, Italy and Spain, have agreed to tax transactions on stocks and bonds between financial institutions at 0.1% and derivatives at 0.01%.
The financial transaction tax is about fair taxation, smart taxation, and a stronger, more coordinated approach to taxing the financial sector. These objectives remain valid and fully achievable. So now it is the time for swift progress.
According to the European Commission, if all EU countries were on board, the tax could bring an estimated 57 billion euros. But the UK, home to Europe's largest financial market, strongly opposes the initiative. Sweden is also skeptical. Those who agree with the measure do not necessarily agree on what should be done with the money. France thinks this extra revenue should contribute to the EU's budget, but Germany is against it.
Staying in Europe, you're keeping an eye on the big aviation and defence merger story.
Yes, because a big deadline is approaching on Wednesday for the potential merger between the aviation giant EADS and defence company BAE Systems. They've got until 5 p.m. today, that's London time, under British stock market rules to say whether they want to continue those talks. Now, as we've been reporting all week, those talks have been bogged down by some wrangling by investors, but also by governments, the French and the German and the British governments. Now, we're hearing that the British and French governments have reached some sort of agreement, but Germany is not very happy now. So we'll keep an eye on that story throughout the day to see what happens. Well, now let's get some of the day's other company news. And there's more bad news for the Chinese technology giant Huawei. Canada has now joined the US in branding the company a security threat that could exclude Huawei from a key government contract to build a secure network.
America's biggest mortgage lender is facing fraud charges. A lawsuit has been filed by the Manhattan U.S. attorney against Wells Fargo. The action alleges that mortgage fraud by the bank cost the government hundreds of millions of dollars. Wells Fargo has denied the charges.
And the French music and electronics retailer Fnac is to be floated on the stock market. Its owner PPR made the announcement on Tuesday. It said it plans to focus on its higher margin luxury and sporting goods businesses. PPR owns brands including Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent and Puma. Well, similar to other retailers like Best Buy in the United States, Fnac has suffered for this problem that analysts call showrooming, where customers go into the stores, the showrooms, have a nice look around, see what's available, and then go back home and buy it perhaps cheaper online. E-commerce in France was up 22% in the first 6 months of the year, but that doesn't mean that large retailers can't benefit both from online selling and making the most of their physical presence on the high street.
All that's needed is an ID card, and this customer can change some climbing shoes and get ones that are the right size. She made her request to change them online before coming to the shop.
It's easier. I know what I want when I come here, and there are no delivery charges. I just come and get the product that's there.
This kind of business, combining e-commerce and traditional retail, currently accounts for 1 in 10 transactions in the store. The shop becomes a part of the online business.
It's only a small amount of our business, an extra service. The customers like it. Purchasing is easier. A customer can pick up an item in a couple of minutes, compared to the usual 7 minutes in a normal shop.
This shop, Decathlon, is one of France's biggest retail names. It ranks in the top 15 e-commerce sites. Traditional retail has been carving out a part of the online pie for several years.
Having a network of shops, a physical presence, a label, information about your customers is a real advantage. 2 things matter right now. The first is about understanding what customers want, understanding people who are not buying solely in a shop and not buying solely online. It's about how to understand the digital customer, and secondly, how to make your business grow around that.
E-commerce in France is highly competitive. The next battle is one of scale. Large companies will fare better, and that means traditional retail outlets are well placed.
And we're going to stay here in France because the President François Hollande is going to be meeting the Spanish leader.
That's right. Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy will be coming from Madrid to Paris later this Wednesday morning. The 2 leaders will have a working lunch or the press conference this afternoon. Now, of course, they'll be talking about the Eurozone crisis and presumably the issue of whether Spain is going to seek a full bailout.
And now moving on to some bad news for one of Spain's best-known newspapers.
Yes, the economic crisis there in Spain's touching everything. The media has not been spared at all. The daily newspaper El País is axing 1/3 of its staff and slashing salaries for those who remain by 15%. Means a total of 149 layoffs. That's according to an employees' council there. Sales are down. Reduced advertising, of course, which is so important for media. The Spanish media sector's lost about 8,000 jobs, in fact, since 2008.
OK, and we're going to end with a row in the English Channel over scallops.
Over scallops, exactly. Now, angry French and British fishermen have been exchanging insults on the English Channel. You can see they're under quite grey skies in rather rusty boats. Now, it was quite comical in a way. They've both been hurling insults at each other, but neither side really understanding what the other's saying. But I can tell you what it's about. The argument is over fishing for scallops. French fishermen unhappy that the British have been fishing for them since July, while the season for fishing for scallops only started 8 days ago here in France. So naturally, they're worried that everything's being taken out, but the British say they're perfectly within their rights. So it's a good old-fashioned fish war going on there. We're going to have a full report on that, in fact, in just over an hour from now.
The French and the British, they just can't help but bicker, can they? All right, thank you very much, Matthew, and thank you for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24.